City Councilor Isaac Benton. I'm here with Councilor Pat Davis and Emily Kaltenbach of the Drug Policy Alliance to just introduce it's being introduced tonight, our bill to decriminalize marijuana and make it a lower priority for the city of Albuquerque enforcement. And we all know the taxing situation for our police officers and how much they're trying to tackle. And this is certainly not something where they need to be spending time, inordinate time in any way, or sitting around or waiting to go to court on a marijuana bust of less than an ounce. So that's really got to change. 2015, Councilor Ray Garduno, Councilor Davis's predecessor, and I sponsored basically a similar bill, also working with Emily, and it passed. The mayor would not sign it. We're hopefully that if we can get the same votes and pass this, that perhaps Mayor Keller would look kindly upon this, which totally makes sense because we can see the direction our country is going in. And the direction is decriminalization and responsible regulation of marijuana. So that's why I'm here, and happy to have a co-sponsor with a lot of energy and some great help from the Alliance. So thank you.
Thanks, Ike. And thanks so much, Ike. Thanks, Emily, for helping us do this again. Emily and I started this program back when I was a community organizer, and we ran the very first ballot initiatives for marijuana decriminalization in Albuquerque way back in 2014. Mm-hmm. We did it here in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and it gained overwhelming support from the community. Santa Fe adopted it and gave us a way to start this process. And here in Albuquerque, as Councilor Benton mentioned, the council picked up that vibe from the community, tried to move forward with that legislation, and had it vetoed. I think we have a new administration who ran on responsible, common sense drug laws and ending the drug war, and this is an incredibly important first step for us here. And so it's a good time for us to bring this back. As a former police officer myself, I can tell you for the hundreds of drug arrests that I spent, the hours it takes to do the paperwork, to do the drug test, for overtime in court. When I came back and joined the city council, we started talking to police officers and they share that concern. I can tell you that in a city where we still have people waiting 20 and 30 minutes for responses to burglaries and other crimes, minutes matter. And the last thing our police officers want and the last thing our residents want is to be waiting on a backup or another police officer who's doing paperwork on a marijuana crime that, quite frankly, the majority of the city thinks should be legal. So this new legislation allows the city removes criminal penalties from our ordinance, replaces it with a simple $25 fine. It lets police officers simply ignore minor marijuana and drug paraphernalia offenses or issue a simple $25 ticket. It saves the city thousands of dollars every year in police work and frees up officers to really do more pressing work. We're excited to have the endorsement and support of the Albuquerque Police Officers Association Union because, like me, cops know that they have better things to do and they would rather be working on things that actually impact public safety than hemming up kids and young people with a petty drug offense that keeps them from getting scholarships and job applications for the rest of their lives. The city should not be in the business of doing that to our citizens, and with this legislation, we hope that we won't. But getting it right matters, and that's why the policy matters. And so we're proud to partner with the Drug Policy Alliance, the nation's premier organization working to end the war on drugs, and have been at the forefront of this work for marijuana decriminalization all around the country. So I'm proud to sponsor with Emily again, and thank you for being here to help us figure this out. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. Well, good afternoon. I'm really proud to be standing here today with Councilor Benton and Councilor Davis on their proposal, which we wholeheartedly support. It was just a few weeks ago that Jeff Sessions announced his war on marijuana, and I'm really inspired to see cities like Albuquerque, like Jackson, Mississippi, really step up and resist and push back on the Trump administration when it comes to marijuana reform. I believe that cities are best positioned to really figure out their own solutions to their problems. And I think this is one of those solutions for a city like Albuquerque. The people of Albuquerque really want to live in a just society. And in 2016, they voted and supported decriminalization when it was on the ballot. Over 60% of residents in this county voted in favor of decriminalization. And so I think we have to just ask a couple questions. One is, do we want to live in a kind of society that punishes adults, that arrests them and incarcerates them for possessing a substance that unequivocally has been proven to be less dangerous than alcohol and tobacco. And I think we also have to ask, why should we put our children at risk and our police officers at risk because we're stretching law enforcement resources beyond their means to address low-level crimes that really don't harm our community. So I'm excited that Albuquerque could become the next city to decriminalize marijuana, right behind Jackson, Mississippi, that just 2 weeks ago their city council voted unanimously to decriminalize marijuana. Decriminalization is not unique, nor is it new. A third of the U.S. Residents live in jurisdictions where marijuana is decriminalized, and let's give the residents of Albuquerque a chance to live in a jurisdiction like that. So I'm excited to be working with our elected officials and with Mayor Keller to bring sensible marijuana reform to the city of Albuquerque. So thank you both. It's a pleasure to work with all of you.
I know we're headed to City Council in a few minutes where we're going to introduce this formally and officially tonight, but we have a few minutes for a couple questions if we want to do follow-up, if that's okay. And then.
What are some of the nuances that you do have to consider with legislation like this, the small details?
Well, Maddie, I think the first thing is the difference from when we did the very first ballot initiatives and when Ike and Ray passed the first initiative is we've added some new provisions to ensure that people with a medical marijuana card, valid medical marijuana license, would be exempt for arrest or fine under this new ordinance, because it's a reality that tens of thousands of New Mexicans rely on cannabis to treat medical conditions, and we don't want them to end up in the criminal system or even under the fine system by exercising their medical rights. So we addressed that. But we also talked about, and Emily brought from our experiences in other cities, real questions about what do you do about issues of not just decriminalizing marijuana, but sometimes if a police officer wants to really go out there, they could ignore the marijuana and charge you with the rolling papers or the whatever. And so we're really just trying to say, if you're engaged in something that's not hurting anybody else, we're not in the business of hurting you. But those details really matter in how we get there and figuring out sort of not just to have a press conference to say we're being friendly for marijuana, but actually to figure out a real process to be sure we live up to that.
And we do try to speak to people who are going to enforce it.
Thanks.
And also adjudicate it, if it comes to that. So we speak to our police union, our officers, and we speak to our lawyers. And things do change, things do evolve, and so we're coming back at this. I'm coming back at this a second time. I really appreciate the help from Pat.
Yeah.
Seems like there already are still few marijuana arrests for small possession in this town.
Yeah.
So what do you think, why is the need given that fact?
Well,
I would say, provision for pretext for profiling and things of that sort, that if an officer just wanted to bother somebody, this gives a pretext in the current situation. But when it's not a priority, it's much less of a pretext for that sort of.
And I want to follow Councilor Benton and say, we're not just doing this because we hear that it's an issue. We followed the data to be sure we understood. And so we're excited. We have the police union that's on board with us, police officers. The police chief says they can do this and they can pass the policies. When we look at the data, 177 people in a year whose only charge was marijuana ended up in the criminal justice system. But that's real dollars, because that's 3 or 4 hours for the cop, 3 or 4 hours in court, thousands of dollars in overtime and police service. And we have a backlog of rape kits at the crime lab. But the same people doing that work are also testing marijuana on petty offenses and creating more of a backlog. So it is not a big chunk of the work that our police officers do. But when they're spending time doing that, those hours add up. They add up to full-time officers. They add up to backlogs for more serious crimes. And quite frankly, we should be putting everything on the table right now to figure out how to address Albuquerque's real crime problem and taking stuff like this off.
Yeah, and it's 177 families, and so it's not just that one person that gets impacted, but when we think of the whole family that then gets criminalized within the criminal justice system, so that parent loses a job, what happens to those kids? I think we have to think about that it is a real human cost as well.